Hello, my name is Robbie Schwarz, and I would like to welcome you to our overview training on the Boulder County BuildSmart Residential Code. BuildSmart is based on the 2021 IECC as published in Chapter 11 of the IRC. In this presentation, we will give you an overview of how new residential buildings demonstrate compliance with the updated code. You can find the Boulder County Building Code amendments on the Boulder County website. The URL is listed on the bottom of this slide. Once on this page, you will see that the code update went into effect on March 31st of 2025, so all new homes and existing home projects now have to submit for permit using this new code. As I said before, we will be focusing on the BuildSmart section of the code update, which is Boulder County's version of the energy code that is structured based on the 2021 IECC as written in Chapter 11 of the IRC. You can find a link to the BuildSmart code amendments on the Boulder County website. In addition, Boulder County has adopted provisions of the state of Colorado's electric ready, solar ready, and low energy and carbon codes, which we will also touch on in this presentation. As we dive into the details of the code amendments, we see that the provisions of BuildSmart are the residential code for 1 and 2 family dwellings in Boulder County. This is also where the link between the BuildSmart code and Chapter 11 of the IECC is stated. It should also be noted that as amended, the provisions are not interchangeable with the residential energy provisions of the International Energy Conservation Code, and therefore you will need to understand the BuildSmart adoption specifically when building in Boulder County. Commercial buildings and residential buildings that are not 1 and 2 family residential dwellings do not use the BuildSmart Energy Code, but rather the provisions of the International Energy Conservation Code adopted in Boulder County. So let's look at compliance with BuildSmart for new construction in Boulder County. It's important to note that Boulder County is specifically stating that to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of BuildSmart, you must use a HERS Energy Rating Index score rather than the IECC's Energy Rating Index score. This is not a new compliance metric for Boulder County. Rather, this explicit statement better ensures consistency and removes confusion since the IECC and HERS Energy Rating Index score for the same house are not the same number. Boulder County amended IRC Chapter 11 that lays out how compliance using an Energy Rating Index score in Section 1106 works. Once again, BuildSmart states that the Energy Rating Index system being used in Boulder County is the ResNet HERS Index. In addition, BuildSmart leverages Section 1106.2.1 to bring in the mandatory requirements of the Energy Conservation Code. These requirements will be addressed in detail in a separate presentation, as well as in some more general ways in a few moments. Table 1106.5 reveals the required maximum HERS Energy Rating Index score that must be achieved for new homes built in Boulder County. Therefore, the first step to comply with BuildSmart is to determine the square footage of the home being permitted. BuildSmart defines conditioned floor area as the horizontal projection of the floors associated with the conditioned space. For the purposes of this chapter, the conditioned floor area shall be measured as the floor area within the inside face of the interior air barrier system. This means that for the purposes of this chapter, when determining the HERS index requirement threshold and other associated requirements for the house based on the size of the house, the floor area shall be measured as the floor area within the inside face of the interior air barrier. As represented using the red lines in this diagram on this slide, the dwelling is 260 square feet. However, When generating the HERS index score, the rater will have to follow the ResNet HERS standard ANSI 301 and calculate the floor area based off of a measurement from the outside wall to outside wall as represented by the blue lines on this diagram. In this case, the conditioned floor area is 294 square feet instead of 260 square feet. I bring this up because you will need to recognize that these two numbers are different and are used to describe the conditioned floor area of your project for different purposes. Remember that in Table 1106.5, the lower the HERS Energy Rating Index score, the more efficient the house is. So the home can achieve a low Energy Rating Index score, but not one over 50 when modeled without renewable energy generation. The far right column of this table shows the HERS Energy Rating Index score requirement when modeled with renewable energy generation. This HERS Energy Rating Index score gets lower as the house gets bigger. This column, however, is a bit confusing, so let's look at footnote C a bit closer to get some more guidance. Footnote C states that homes that are 100% electric, meaning that no gas line has been installed to the house, are not required to install renewable energy generation, solar PV panels, for example, to achieve the table's second HERS Energy Rating Index score requirement. This boils down to meaning that all electric homes are not required to install solar PV or any type of additional renewable generation system if they don't want to. All electric homes can also, if they would like to, install backup systems like battery backup or generator systems that only operate during an electric grid outage without triggering the lower HERS Energy Rating Index score requirements. The table does not explicitly state this, but it is true that if a home of a specific size can achieve a HERS score in column 2 without renewables, they also are not required to install solar PV systems on the house. For example, this is why homes that are 1,500 square feet or less don't have to install renewable energy systems, as the HERS Energy Rating Index score is 50 in both columns. Homes that are 2,000 square feet, however, must be able to get a HERS Energy Rating Index score of 25 according to the table, and it's unlikely that they can do so without adding renewables to the house. But for a 1,700 square foot house, for example, a HERS Energy Rating Index of 40 is achievable without adding renewable energy generation, and if they can do so, they are not required to install renewable energy generation systems to the house. So the house must achieve the HERS Energy Rating Index score noted in Table 1106.5. If the house is not all electric, it must also add some renewable energy generation to bring the score down to that required by the table in the far right column, or the second column. The proposed design HERS score and full compliance report without renewable and with renewable energy respectively must be provided at permitting. And confirmation that the home achieves what was proposed must be submitted using a confirmed compliance report in order to receive a certificate of occupancy. So this is a requirement for a proposed design and a confirmed design using the HERS Energy Rating System. Section 1106.4 further clarifies the meaning of a HERS Energy Rating Index score that has been produced before renewable energy has been added to the energy analysis, and then after it has been added as well. Boulder County is upholding the IECC's longstanding desire to protect the integrity of the building thermal envelope by setting the maximum ERI score allowed before renewables at 50. Regardless of the size of the home, this will require a sound building thermal envelope and solid performing mechanical systems be installed in the house. That being said, the energy model can help determine the most cost-effective way to achieve that goal. Remember that the construction documents must include a detailed plans of the building's thermal envelope. This plan must include the floor plan and an elevation view to clearly show the building thermal envelope continuity and alignment with the continuous air barrier of the home. In addition, the details on the construction documents must include information about the insulation and fenestration values and equipment efficiencies, duct location, air barrier and air sealing details, and more for the new construction project. The 3 sections of the BuildSmart code listed here is where you can go to find all the information about what is required on the construction documents. Remember that details and values in your construction documents must match the submitted HERS Energy Rating Index and HVAC design reports. If something changes during construction, the analysis should be looked at again. Once again, here are the maximum HERS Energy Rating Index scores that are required for new construction by Boulder County's BuildSmart code, without and with renewable energy generation. Remember, all electric homes are only held to the HERS maximum score of 50 and are not required to add renewable energy generation systems to the house. Renewable energy systems used for compliance with the HERS score in Table 1106.5 may be permanently installed on the property of the building or purchased from an off-site provider. When off-site renewable energy is purchased, the renewable energy must be delivered or credited to the building site under an energy contract with a duration of not less than 15 years. In addition, if the house purchases off-site renewable generation, the HERS report needs to clearly state that that is the case. This is because the HERS Energy Rating Index modeling system must be manipulated by the energy rater to take off-site renewable generation into account. This slide demonstrates why Boulder County has decided to only use the HERS Energy Rating Index modeling compliance approach for compliance with this code. Energy modeling allows the design team to do what is called scenario modeling, to try thousands of different approaches before a single nail is bought for the project, thus determining not only what is needed to comply with the HERS requirements of BuildSmart, but also to determine the most cost-effective and efficient way to design the assembly for any particular new home built in the county. What the software is doing specifically is creating an energy rating index score for your rated home in comparison to a reference home. So how we begin is by doing a takeoff of your house and entering the dimensions of the building assemblies into the software. The software then creates 2 houses that are geometric twins of each other. One of the houses is called the reference home. The other house is called the rated home. When you compare the rated home to the reference home, you're trying to get an energy rating index score that is less than or equal to that which is required by the BuildSmart program. If your house is 50 or less, in essence, without renewable energy, you're going to pass the BuildSmart code. And then you have to determine if you're going to have to install renewable energy to lower the energy rating index score even further. We can determine through energy modeling what is the most cost-effective way to achieve that energy rating index of 50 or lower. And that's why there is a big benefit for using a software modeling approach. The Boulder County BuildSmart code has eliminated the other compliance options in the base code and is only using the HERS Energy Rating Index compliance option. That being said, BuildSmart has kept and added to the N1106.2 mandatory requirements table that we will dive into in great detail in future presentations. The requirements in this table are primarily installation requirements to better ensure the performance of building assemblies and systems. BuildSmart has also added some embodied carbon requirements that I will address in a few minutes. The first mandatory requirement in Table N1106.2.1 is this section of code, N1101.5, Information on Construction Documents. Most of the items listed here are not new. Energy compliance pathway and air sealing details, however, deserve more attention on the construction documents and will be looked at more closely at the time of permitting. You will see coming up that the compliance pathway section does not mean the same thing in Boulder County because all homes are required to use a HERS Energy Rating Index compliance methodology. Air sealing details have been required since at least the 2012 IECC and will not be overlooked anymore. Details of additional electric infrastructure, location of pathways for routing electrical raceways for the solar ready zone, and location and designation of EV ready spaces are all newly added requirements to be addressed on the construction documents, so be sure to include them in detail. After determining the required HERS Energy Rating Index score that your project needs to achieve, your second step is to plan your proposed design for permitting your new construction project under the updated Boulder County BuildSmart code and follow the steps as outlined in this flowchart that comes from the Boulder County BuildSmart reference guide that can be found on the county's website. Determine the size of the home based on the conditioned floor area, not the finished floor area. Again, this should be based on the Boulder County definition of conditioned space, not the ResNet HERS definition of conditioned space. Also, once you have determined the flow path you must follow to demonstrate compliance with the code, your next step is to make it clear on your construction documents which of these three construction pathways you're going to use. Determine the electrification and solar ready requirements that are applied to your specific project. Then begin doing the energy modeling to determine the energy specifications that work for your specific project to meet the HERS Energy Rating Index score requirements that we just went over from table N1106.5. We next need to determine the programmatic requirements that must be used for your project. Like in the past, Boulder County BuildSmart code utilizes building programs and building program verification to ensure better compliance with the code. I will show you what this means in a few seconds. Next, and finally, remember that there are base mandatory requirements in the BuildSmart code that are outlined in table 1106.2.1 that also must be followed. These requirements may or may not be required by the building programs, and I will present specifically on the building program requirements in another recorded presentation that will be on the Boulder County website for you to view. Unlike the past BuildSmart code, the 2025 BuildSmart code uses building programs requirements regardless of the size of the project. Homes that are less than or equal to 1,500 square feet of conditioned floor area must earn compliance and certification with the most recent version of the National Program Requirements for Energy Star certified new homes. Don't worry, Boulder County will keep the latest version of the Energy Star New Homes Program compliance documents and checklist in case the program is permanently defunded. The home must meet all the requirements for electrification and solar ready as required by the state of Colorado, which I will explain in a moment. The home must also achieve the HERS Energy Rating Index score as displayed in table 1106.5 that we went over earlier. And lastly, the home must be compliant with the mandatory requirements in table 1106.2.1, which we showed earlier as well. New homes that are between 1,501 square feet and 3,000 square feet of conditioned floor area must earn compliance and certification to the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Home program. This means that the home also earns compliance and certification with the most recent versions and national program requirements of Energy Star certified homes and the EPA's Indoor Air Plus program. The home must also meet all the requirements for electrification and solar ready as required by BuildSmart's adoption of the state of Colorado's Electrification and Solar Ready Code. The home must achieve the HERS Energy Rating Index as outlined in Table 1106.5, as we discussed earlier. And lastly, as we said before, it must be compliant with the mandatory requirements in Table 1106.2.1. Now, for new homes that are larger than 3,000 square feet of conditioned floor area, they must earn compliance and certification to one of the following programs: the most recent version of the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Program, either version of the Passive House, either PHI or FIAS Passive House certifications, platinum level of the LEED for Homes program, or the Living Building Challenge program. The homes must also meet all the requirements for electrification and solar ready, and must achieve the HERS Energy Rating Index score as outlined in Table N1106.5. And lastly, the home must be compliant with the mandatory requirements in Table 1106.2.1, as I said earlier. In addition, the home must comply with the embodied carbon requirements in 1108. This is only required for homes that are larger than 3,000 square feet. There are a number of reports that are required to be turned in for permitting and/or for their certificate of occupancy, as outlined on this slide, including the HERS Energy Rating Index compliance documentation that is looked at in section N1106.7.2.1 and N1106.7.2.2. In addition, there is a requirement for a certificate to be posted in the home at final, which is looked at in N1101.14 as part of the mandatory requirements table that we looked at earlier. Other documents that are required are listed on the BuildSmart Compliance Guide that is located on the Boulder County website. These reports include, but are not limited to, the HERS Energy Rating Index report demonstrating the home's energy efficiency and compliance with the minimum HERS Energy Rating Index score as outlined in the N1106.5 HERS table. The HERS report must also include the fuel summary report and a full building file report when it's turned in for permitting, and the confirmed rating is turned in for the certificate of occupancy. The specific program compliance documentation must be turned in as well, and electrification and solar ready documentation, including a whole house electrical load calculation and documents demonstrating compliance with the state electrification and solar ready code, must be turned in. This includes the designated solar ready zone, roof area, and other solar ready compliance documentation. Electric vehicle charging outlet location and wiring, embodied carbon reporting for homes larger than 3,000 square feet, as well as HVAC load and design reports for homes of any size must also be turned in. Lastly, I recommend that you take a look at what I call the often missed reports for compliance with sections of the code that are not as forward-facing as the HERS Energy Rating Index score, electrification, or program compliance. These reports are listed on this slide. Now, let's go back to homes that are larger than 3,000 square feet. We have to understand the embodied carbon requirements of section N1108. Compliance with this section of code is not required until permits that are received on or after April of 2026. Like many jurisdictions around the country, Boulder County is just beginning to determine how to include embodied carbon within the energy code. For this reason, you will see that the BuildSmart code will only be addressing carbon associated with concrete. Concrete mixtures cannot exceed the global warming potential limits that are outlined in Table N1108.2.1 as displayed on this slide. Specifically, the global warming potential is a measure of how much energy 1 ton of atmospheric gas will absorb over a specific period relative to 1 ton of CO2. Simply put, the global warming potential tells us how much heat a greenhouse gas traps in the atmosphere compared to CO2. BuildSmart is starting with concrete because it is one of the most carbon-intensive building materials used in residential construction. BuildSmart will use environmental product declaration forms to document compliance, and as the county and construction professionals gain experience documenting the embodied carbon global warming potential in concrete, it is likely that in the future codes, more building materials will be added to Table N1108.2.1 maximum global warming thresholds. Now let's look at those aspects of the newly released Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready codes that have been incorporated into the BuildSmart 2025 code. The next few slides are electric requirements that are built into the BuildSmart code. This includes more detail regarding requirements for what needs to be noted on construction documents for the Colorado Model Electric Ready code and the Solar Ready provisions. These requirements are listed on this slide. Additional electric infrastructure requirements are laid out in section N1104.2. BuildSmart does not prohibit the use of fossil fuel mechanical equipment. It does require, however, that additional electric infrastructure be added next to each fossil fuel appliance, such as the furnace, hot water heater, and cooktop. This includes properly labeled reserve space in the electric panel for properly sized breakers that can serve the future equipment. This future-proofs the home and allows the consumer more choice when the mechanical appliance fails or needs to be replaced in the future. For additional information about electric vehicle charging infrastructure requirements for new construction, begin with section 1104.3 and then go to the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready codes as amended and published on the Boulder County website as part of the Boulder County Code and Amendments documents. This will take you to the Electric Vehicle Ready chapter number 5. The exception to the requirements to install electric vehicle charging stations in new construction is basically limited to a detached garage that is unfinished. You can read the exception specifically on this slide. We are now looking at the Electric Vehicle Ready Chapter 5 of the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code. Here it says that an EV-ready parking space must be provided for 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouse units that provide a dedicated attached or detached garage or other on-site designated parking spot. An EV-ready space means that the electric infrastructure has been run to the designated space. You should also remember that the space should be located on the construction documents for plan review. As we saw before, the BuildSmart code requires the HERS Energy Rating Index score for homes that are larger than 1,500 square feet to have renewable energy generation in some form, but not in all situations. Therefore, the majority of new homes will have solar panels installed, so the residential solar ready provisions can be looked at as design parameters or constraints that will help better ensure a proper installation of the solar system. For those homes that are 1,500 square feet or less, these solar ready provisions must be abided by. Obviously, if you are already installing a system on the roof, you can use the exception number 1. If you plan to use exception number 2, please be prepared to fully document that the home cannot be designed to take advantage of the sun's energy. The total solar ready zone area for each dwelling unit shall be not less than 300 square feet exclusive of mandatory access or setback areas as required by the International Fire Code. The solar ready zone shall be composed of areas not less than 5 feet in width and not less than 80 square feet exclusive of access or setback areas as required by the International Fire Code. The exception is for new townhouses 3 stories or less in height above grade plane and with a total floor area of less than or equal to 2,000 square feet of conditioned space per townhouse unit. These shall have a solar-ready area of not less than 150 square feet. As shown on this slide, the solar-ready zone must be free from obstruction, including but not limited to vents, chimneys, and roof-mounted equipment. Section RS 402.5 addresses shading of the solar-ready zone. The construction documents must document the structural design loads, the roof dead load, and the roof live load. They also must document the pathways for routing of conduit and/or raceways from the solar-ready zone to the electric service panel. In addition, a roof plan on the construction documents must clearly show where the solar panels will be installed or where the solar-ready zone is for that particular house. We have talked about information on construction documents several times in this presentation to make it clear that to better ensure a timely plan review and permitting process, you must ensure that all information is clearly provided to the Boulder County Building Department in order to get your plan review back in a timely manner. Don't forget the electric service panel. It must have sufficient labeled reserved space for all additional electric infrastructure, including for all appliances, solar-ready zone, EV charging, and more. Okay, we're almost there. Lastly, we want to make sure that you understand that Boulder County requires that compliance with the BuildSmart code, including proposed design HERS energy modeling, field inspection, and final confirmed HERS energy rating index modeling, be carried out by an approved third-party ResNet HERS energy rater. Energy raters are required to view the BuildSmart mandatory requirements for construction professionals video presentation that is located on the Boulder County website. Other construction professionals such as architects, builders, and trade partners are encouraged to view the presentation as well. So to conclude, we see that in new construction there is a significant push to increase the efficiency through a mixture of code and above code program requirements. That a complete adoption of programmatic building has happened with the Energy Star program now being required by smaller homes, and that the Zero Energy Code threshold has dropped to homes that are 1,500 square feet. Boulder County has adopted and integrated the state of Colorado's Model Electric Ready, Solar Ready, and Low Carbon codes into BuildSmart. BuildSmart is putting these performance metric requirements out there and is using an energy modeling approach to achieve the required levels of performance based on house size. This gives design teams the most flexibility in how house specifications for the house are developed. In this way, the energy modeling used in the HERS Energy Rating Index system can help figure out the most cost-effective way to achieve better performance and compliance. Thank you for listening to this presentation on the BuildSmart compliance for new construction. You can download the Boulder County Building Code and amendments that include the BuildSmart code from the website address that is listed on this slide, or you can just Google Boulder County Building Code. On the right side related links section, you will see a direct link to the BuildSmart code. If you have any questions, please reach out through email or by phone. Please also look at the Boulder County website for presentations on the mandatory requirements for new construction, the basics of programmatic building, and existing home addition and remodel project compliance presentations that will be posted there. Thanks so much for listening to this presentation and have a great day.